The room went instantly freezing. Princess Charlotte stood with her arm pulled back, eyes wide, her voice ringing off the stone walls of the dressing suite. Queen Camilla froze mid-reach, her fingers inches away from the antique gold links. Nobody in the room dared to breathe as the young princess drew a line in the sand that changed everything. That single desperate scream exposed the deepest rift in the palace since the coronation. The fracture at the fitting. The velvet jewelry case sat open on the mahogany table. Inside rested a heavy triple-strand bracelet made of rare Welsh gold, set with 9 square-cut emeralds and a single teardrop pearl hanging from the clasp. It was a private gift from Queen Elizabeth II, handed down through a specific unpublicized codicil in her final will. Princess Charlotte reached for the box at the exact moment Queen Camilla walked into the fitting room. The Queen Consort did not hesitate. She extended her hand toward the velvet lining, her fingers brushing the edge of the gold clasp. Charlotte pulled the box toward her chest. The words came out before anyone could stop them. "Don't touch it!" The shout was loud enough to rattle the porcelain tea service on the side table. 2 senior dressers dropped their measuring tapes. A royal tailor froze with his shears in midair. For 3 seconds, the only sound in the room was the heavy ticking of the French mantel clock. Camilla pulled her hand back, her knuckles turning white against her silk skirt. She did not look at the princess. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the senior dresser standing near the door. The silence stretched. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. The staff knew the rules of the palace. You do not witness a conflict between the blood royals and the married-in consorts. If you do, you forget it instantly. The senior dresser cleared her throat, her voice trembling slightly as she checked her clipboard. She announced that the fitting schedule had been moved forward by 15 minutes. She requested that all external staff vacate the room immediately to prepare the garments for the evening reception. The tailors and fitters gathered their needles, thread, and fabrics in absolute silence. They bowed quickly and filed through the side exit into the gallery. Within 60 seconds, the heavy oak door clicked shut. The room was clear, but the tension remained locked inside. With the staff gone, the physical boundary between the 2 women became clear. Charlotte kept both hands firmly over the velvet box, anchoring it to her lap. She was only 11 years old, but her posture reflected the rigid training of her great-grandmother. Camilla smoothed down her jacket. She took a step toward the window, looking out over the manicured lawns of Windsor. Her voice was quiet, measured, and entirely devoid of warmth. She reminded Charlotte that family heirlooms belong to the crown, not to individuals. She noted that the registry of royal jewels was currently being updated for the upcoming autumn state visits. But this specific piece did not belong on the standard registry. The history of the emerald bracelet explains the fierce protection. Queen Elizabeth had commissioned it in the late 1980s using gold from the Clogau St. David's mine. It was never worn in public. The late monarch kept it in her private safe at Sandringham, away from the official royal collection. During the final months of her life, the late queen signed a private memorandum. It bypassed the Duchy of Lancaster entirely. The document stated that the bracelet was to pass directly to Princess Charlotte on her 10th birthday, to be held in trust by her mother, the Princess of Wales. Camilla knew about the document, but she disputed its legal weight. Her own private secretary had been reviewing the estate files for months, looking for items that could be reallocated to the central sovereign collection. To the Queen Consort, the bracelet was an unregistered asset that should be worn by the woman currently holding the highest female rank in the monarchy. Charlotte did not back down. She stood up from her chair, keeping the box tucked tightly under her forearm. She stated that her mother had the key to the vault and that the piece would remain where it belonged. Camilla turned away from the window. She did not argue further. She simply smiled, a brief, tight movement of her lips, and walked toward the main double doors. Before she exited, she paused and looked back at the young princess. She remarked that things have a way of moving around the palace when events require them. The door closed, leaving Charlotte alone in the dressing room. She immediately reached into her pocket for her phone. Her fingers traced the screen as she dialed the direct line to Adelaide Cottage. The immediate crisis in the fitting room had passed, but a much larger legal battle was already unfolding behind the scenes. The dispute over the Welsh gold bracelet was not an isolated incident of greed. It was part of a larger, quiet campaign regarding the distribution of the late Queen's personal estate. When Queen Elizabeth passed away, she left behind dozens of boxes of personal diaries, letters, and private jewelry pieces. These items were distinct from the crown jewels kept in the Tower of London. They were her personal property, bought with her own funds or gifted by foreign dignitaries before her accession. Under British law, personal gifts to the monarch are subject to unique tax exemptions if passed from sovereign to sovereign. Because of this, King Charles inherited the bulk of the estate. However, the private codicils allowed for small, highly sentimental items to be distributed to his grandchildren. Camilla's interest in the emerald bracelet went beyond its material value. Her family circle had been expanding its influence within palace ceremonies. Her own grandchildren had served as pages of honor at the coronation, a move that had already caused friction with senior courtiers. Rumors had begun circulating within the master of the household's department that Camilla wanted to secure specific historic pieces for her own daughter and granddaughters to wear at minor royal events. The emerald bracelet, with its deep connection to Queen Elizabeth, was the ultimate prize. If she could absorb it into the main collection, she could control who wore it. 10 minutes after the confrontation, Princess Catherine arrived at the dressing suite. She did not enter through the main gallery. She used the private staff entrance to avoid the photographers stationed near the courtyard. Charlotte was sitting on the sofa, the velvet box still resting on her lap. She looked up as her mother entered. Catherine did not ask for an explanation. She had already received a brief coded text message from the senior dresser who had cleared the room. Catherine walked over, took the box, and snapped the lid shut. She slipped it into her leather tote bag. Her face was calm, but her movements were sharp and deliberate. She took her daughter's hand and walked out toward their waiting vehicle. The line had been drawn. The Princess of Wales was not just protecting a piece of jewelry, she was protecting her daughter's future status within a rapidly shifting court. A legacy left in secret. The black Range Rover pulled up to the rear entrance of Adelaide Cottage. Princess Catherine stepped out first, her fingers gripping the strap of her leather tote bag. Princess Charlotte followed her inside, heading straight for the small study on the ground floor. Catherine placed the velvet box on the desk. She took a heavy brass key from a hidden drawer in the desk organizer and inserted it into the small floor safe beneath the bookshelf. The lock turned with a heavy click. The senior dresser's hasty dismissal of the tailors had bought them time. The official palace story was already circulating. The dressers claimed the room had been cleared due to an unannounced plumbing check in the adjoining bathroom. This quick cover story kept the incident away from the ears of the lower-level staff, but it did not erase the problem. The core issue remained sitting in the velvet box on Catherine's desk. The specific terms of Queen Elizabeth's private legacy were drafted in August 2022. The late monarch sat with her personal solicitor at Balmoral Castle just 3 weeks before her passing. She initialed a 12-page document titled The Personal Codicils of the Sovereign. This document was separate from the official royal archives at Windsor Castle. It remained in the custody of a private law firm based in Lincoln's Inn Fields. The firm had handled the private finances of the Bowes-Lyon family for over 80 years. The text of the memorandum was explicit about the emerald bracelet. It designated the item as a personal gift to Charlotte. The document specified that the bracelet must remain in the custody of the Duchess of Cambridge, now the Princess of Wales, until the princess reached her 18th birthday. Camilla's legal team disputed the validity of this Balmoral memorandum. They argued that any item containing historic gemstones from the royal vaults could not be legally alienated from the central estate. They claimed the 9 emeralds had originally belonged to a tiara, dismantled during the reign of King George V. If those emeralds belonged to the state collection, the late queen had no legal right to gift them to her granddaughter. The ownership of the stone depended entirely on a single inventory log from 1925. Catherine opened the velvet box one more time to inspect the inside lining. Underneath the satin cushion, there was a tiny gold-stamped inventory number, 00047. She took a photograph of the number with her personal phone and sent it directly to Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary. She added a brief note asking for clarification on the sovereign registry status of that specific number. The tension escalated when the reply arrived 20 minutes later. The message did not come from Sir Clive. It came from a secure internal email address belonging to Camilla's private office. The email stated that inventory number 00047 had been flagged for immediate appraisal. The office requested the physical delivery of the item to the keeper of the privy purse by 5 o'clock the following evening. The note concluded with a reminder that all assets under dispute must remain on palace grounds during an active audit. The demand was clear, but it contained a major tactical error. The email inadvertently revealed that Camilla's team had been searching the database without King Charles's explicit authorization. Prince William entered the study at 6 o'clock, still wearing his formal suit from a charity meeting in London. Catherine handed him her phone. He read the email once, his jaw tightening as he reached the final paragraph. William did not call Camilla's office. He dialed his father's personal phone directly, bypassing the switchboard at Clarence House. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. The king was currently traveling between Highgrove and London. He expressed genuine surprise when William mentioned the inventory audit. Charles stated he had not signed any orders regarding the 25 inventory logs or the Balmoral codicils. The mystery deepened. If the king had not authorized the audit, who had given the keeper of the privy purse the command to reclaim the bracelet? William called a trusted contact within the Royal Archives Department. The archivist confirmed that a senior researcher from Camilla's team had spent 3 days reviewing the private ledgers from the reign of George V. The researcher had specifically requested the files concerning the dismantling of the old tech tiaras. This research project had been logged under a generic heading called Routine Upkeep of the Sovereign Collection. This choice of wording allowed the work to proceed without triggering alerts in the Prince of Wales's office. The motivation behind this deep archival search was tied to an upcoming diplomatic event. In November, the palace would host the annual diplomatic reception for over 500 foreign ambassadors. It was the largest white tie event of the year. The Queen Consort wanted her family members to occupy a prominent position at the reception. She had recently requested that her daughter, Laura Lopes, be granted access to minor royal jewelry pieces for official appearances at state-adjacent functions. The emerald bracelet was the perfect piece for this purpose. Because it was made of Welsh gold and featured a classic design, it carried immense prestige without the heavy political weight of the official crown jewels. If Camilla could prove the stones belonged to the state, she could assign the piece to her own family circle for the evening. Catherine refused to surrender the box. She closed the safe door, spun the combination lock, and placed the brass key back into its hiding spot. She told William that the item would not leave Adelaide Cottage until their own legal representatives from the Lincoln's Inn firm had conducted a full review of the 1925 ledger. She noted that Charlotte's inheritance was a matter of personal honor, not just property. William agreed with the decision. He instructed his staff to draft a formal response to the keeper of the privy purse. The letter stated that the Princess of Wales would retain custody of asset 00047, pending a formal, written clarification signed by the king himself. The letter was delivered by a royal courier at 9 o'clock the next morning. It was a direct challenge to the authority of Camilla's office, and it ensured that the quiet dispute would soon turn into an open conflict within the senior ranks of the family. The Queen's calculated move. Queen Camilla sat at the small writing desk in her private sitting room at Clarence House. She was reviewing the seating chart for the upcoming autumn state visits. Beside the paperwork lay a red leather folder marked with the gold crest of the privy purse. She picked up a silver fountain pen and drew a neat circle around the name of her daughter, Laura Lopes. A knock interrupted her. Her private secretary entered, carrying a printed copy of the refusal letter sent by Prince William's office. The secretary reported that the keeper of the privy purse had officially halted the audit of asset 00047 due to the lack of a direct royal signature. Camilla set the pen down on the blotter. Her immediate plan to absorb the piece into the sovereign collection had hit a wall. The strategy behind the audit was tied directly to a royal decree from 1936. King George VI had established a rule that any jewelry worn by senior female royals during official state functions must be vetted by the Lord Chamberlain's office. This rule prevented family members from wearing pieces that carried controversial histories or unregistered foreign origins. Camilla knew this rule well. By launching the audit, her office sought to classify Charlotte's bracelet as an unvetted asset. Under the 1936 decree, that classification would automatically bar the young princess from wearing it to any public event. The Queen Consort picked up her internal telephone and requested a direct meeting with the king in his study downstairs. King Charles was examining a set of architectural drawings for the refurbishment of the Sandringham stables when his wife entered. Camilla placed the red leather folder on top of the blueprints. She stated that the family's asset protection required a unified front, especially regarding pieces that dated back to the Tech inheritance. Charles adjusted his reading glasses. He opened the folder and looked at the inventory number. He remarked that his mother had explicitly discussed the emerald bracelet with him during her final summer at Balmoral. The king confirmed that Queen Elizabeth had viewed the piece as personal property, distinct from the historic items belonging to the state. He questioned why the privy purse was suddenly involved in a private family matter. Camilla argued that the public perception of the monarchy relied on strict adherence to inventory rules. She pointed out that allowing private codicils to dictate the distribution of historic gemstones could set a dangerous precedent for future generations. The tension in the study grew when Camilla mentioned a specific entry in the 1925 ledger. According to the old records, the 9 square-cut emeralds had not been purchased by King George V. They were a gift from an Indian Maharaja during the Delhi Durbar of 1911. Under modern guidelines, gifts from foreign rulers to the sovereign during official tours cannot be treated as personal property. They must remain part of the national collection. This fact shifted the entire legal landscape. If the emeralds were state gifts from 1911, Queen Elizabeth's Balmoral Memorandum was legally invalid. The late queen could not give away what she did not legally own. Charles closed the folder. He acknowledged the complexity of the Delhi Durbar provenance. He stated that the legal department at Lincoln's Inn Fields would need to verify the original gift terms before any final decision could be made. This delay did not satisfy the queen consort. She knew that verification could take months, and the diplomatic reception was only weeks away. A mystery remained regarding how the bracelet had entered Queen Elizabeth's private safe in the first place. If the stones were part of the 1911 state collection, they should have been stored in the vault at Buckingham Palace, not at Sandringham. Camilla's private secretary discovered the answer later that afternoon. A retired assistant clerk from the Royal Archives provided a crucial piece of information. In 1984, Queen Elizabeth had personally paid for the reconstruction of several damaged pieces from the Delhi Durbar collection. The late queen had used her private funds to pay the jewelry house for the labor and the addition of the Welsh gold band. Because she had financed the remodeling entirely from her personal account, she believed the resulting bracelet belonged to her private estate. This revelation created a major loophole. The stones belonged to the state, but the gold band and the design belonged to the individual. Camilla saw an opportunity in this compromise. She instructed her team to draft a new proposal for Prince William's office. The document suggested that the emeralds be removed from the bracelet and returned to the state vault, while the gold band could be returned to Princess Charlotte. This proposal was a calculated insult to the Wales family. Stripping the stones would destroy the piece that Queen Elizabeth had specifically created for her great-granddaughter. The new demand was sent via secure courier to Adelaide Cottage at 4 o'clock. Princess Catherine read the proposal in her kitchen while her children were finishing their homework. She did not show the document to Charlotte. Instead, she picked up her keys and walked out to the car. She was going to meet with the one person who could resolve the dispute without relying on the palace legal teams. Behind closed doors at Adelaide Cottage, Princess Catherine drove her small vehicle through the security gates of Windsor Great Park, steering toward the private entrance of the Royal Lodge. She parked on the gravel driveway and walked up the stone steps without an umbrella, despite the light mist. She was there to meet the Duke of York's private archivist, who still maintained the personal inventory logs of the late Queen Mother. The archivist met her in the chilly hallway. He carried an old leather-bound ledger from 1985. He opened the pages onto a heavy oak table under a single dim lamp. He pointed to a handwritten entry dated November 12th of that year. The log showed that the 9 square-cut emeralds had not been part of the official Delhi Durbar tiara at all. They were actually private gifts to Queen Mary from her own German relatives, the Grand Duchess of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. This fact changed the entire dispute. If the emeralds came from Queen Mary's personal family collection, they were never state property. They had never belonged to the British government or the Crown collection. They were entirely private assets, passed down through personal wills for 3 generations. Catherine took a clear photograph of the handwritten ledger page. The historical truth was now documented, but the practical conflict at the palace was still escalating. While Catherine was verifying the records at Royal Lodge, a senior communications officer at Buckingham Palace, was drafting an internal media memo. The officer had received an anonymous tip from a private extension within Clarence House. The tip suggested that the media should be briefed on a minor administrative disagreement regarding the storage of historic jewelry pieces. The draft memo suggested using terms like safekeeping protocols and minor generational updates to describe the situation. This was a classic palace tactic. By preparing a media brief, Camilla's office was setting the stage to leak the story if the Wales family refused to comply with the dismantling proposal. If the public read that Prince William was hoarding state gems for his daughter, public pressure might force his hand. Catherine arrived back at Adelaide Cottage at 8 o'clock in the evening. She found William sitting at the kitchen island, his laptop open beside a stack of printed letters. She placed her phone on the counter and showed him the photograph of the 1985 ledger. William looked at the handwriting, then looked up at his wife. He noted that the Clarence House legal team had clearly overlooked or ignored the Mecklenburg-Strelitz origin of the stones. The mystery was why Camilla's researchers had missed such a crucial detail in their own search. The archivist at Royal Lodge had explained that specific private family ledgers had been moved to a separate vault during the palace renovations in 2024. Camilla's team had only searched the main database at Windsor, assuming it was complete. William immediately drafted a formal memo to King Charles's private secretary. He attached the photograph of the 1985 ledger. He stated that the Wales family considered the matter of asset 00047 fully closed. He added that any further attempts to audit or dismantle the bracelet would be treated as an unauthorized interference with private property. The response from Buckingham Palace was silent for the next 24 hours. No emails arrived from Camilla's office. No couriers came to the door of Adelaide Cottage. The quiet did not mean the tension had dissolved. The annual diplomatic reception was now only 48 hours away. Over 500 guests, including foreign royalty and global press corps, would fill the staterooms at Buckingham Palace. On the morning before the event, the master of the household issued the official jewelry protocols for the evening. The document listed every tiara, necklace, and bracelet approved for the senior royal women. Beside Princess Charlotte's name, the registry entry was completely blank. The palace had not tried to seize the bracelet again. Instead, they had simply removed Charlotte from the list of royals permitted to wear any historic pieces from the main collection. If she attended, she would be the only princess without a single piece of heritage jewelry. Charlotte saw the printed list on her mother's desk after school. She did not cry or argue. She picked up a pair of scissors from the drawer and walked over to her sewing basket. She took out a spool of dark green silk ribbon that matched the exact color of the Mecklenburg emeralds. She cut a neat, 3-inch strip of the fabric and folded it into the shape of a classic military rosette. She pinned a small silver St. George's cross coin to the center of the ribbon. She showed the homemade pin to Catherine. She stated she would wear the ribbon on her dress instead of the gold bracelet. She noted that the family would know exactly what the green ribbon represented, even if the cameras only saw a piece of cloth. Catherine agreed with the choice. The young princess had found a way to make her point without breaking a single palace protocol. The stage was set for the diplomatic reception, and the quiet battle was about to move into the public eye under the glare of flashbulbs. The public flashpoint. The double doors of the picture gallery swung open at exactly 8 o'clock. A wave of string music from the Royal Artillery Band carried over the chatter of the assembled diplomatic corps. Foreign ambassadors, foreign royals, and senior cabinet ministers parted to create a wide aisle down the center of the room. King Charles walked through the entrance first, followed closely by Queen Camilla. She wore a heavy cream gown paired with the Greville tiara. Her emerald necklace flashed under the crystal chandeliers. 3 paces behind them came Prince William and Princess Catherine. Princess Charlotte walked between her parents. She wore a simple navy dress with ivory piping. On the left lapel of her dress, pinned tightly against the fabric, sat the small, handmade dark green silk ribbon. The silver St. George's cross coin caught the light every time she took a step. The press photographers stationed in the high gallery above the room immediately adjusted their telephoto lenses. They were looking for the triple-strand Welsh gold bracelet. Instead, they focused their cameras on the unusual green rosette. Camilla paused at the first reception line to greet the French ambassador. She turned her head slightly to look back at the Wales family. Her eyes dropped to Charlotte's lapel. The queen consort's smile tightened for a fraction of a second. She did not say a word to the princess, but she immediately signaled to her senior lady-in-waiting standing near the marble pillar. The protocol rules for diplomatic receptions are rigid. The royal family must move down separate sections of the room to mix with the guests. Within 10 minutes, the king and queen moved toward the far end of the gallery, while William and Catherine remained near the entrance. The Spanish ambassador's wife approached Princess Catherine. She complimented the young princess on her dress and then leaned in slightly to ask about the significance of the green ribbon. She wondered aloud if it represented a new patronage for a youth organization or an environmental initiative. Catherine replied smoothly that the ribbon was a private family emblem. She stated that the green shade was selected to honor a specific historical connection dating back to the reign of Queen Mary. The explanation was polite, but it carried a hidden message for anyone familiar with the family genealogy. By mentioning Queen Mary, Catherine was publicly anchoring the family's right to the Mecklenburg-Strelitz inheritance. The tension deepened when a palace courtier from the Lord Chamberlain's office approached Prince William during a lull in the greetings. The courtier held a small electronic tablet displaying a live article from a major British news website. An anonymous fashion blog had already published a high-resolution close-up of Charlotte's pin. The article questioned why the young princess was wearing a homemade textile badge instead of the traditional family jewelry pieces usually reserved for state functions. The comments section was already filling with speculation about a snub. William looked at the screen and handed the tablet back to the courtier. He stated that the choice of attire was entirely appropriate for a princess of her age. He noted that the household would not issue any official statements regarding private wardrobe decisions. The mystery was how the fashion blog had obtained the high-resolution image so quickly. The media gallery was strictly controlled, and the official palace photographers were the only ones permitted to transmit images directly from the floor during the reception. A security officer solved the mystery 20 minutes later. He noticed a junior press assistant working near the Clarence House staff table. The assistant had been using a personal smartphone to take unauthorized photos from behind the floral arrangements. The phone was confiscated according to standard security protocols. A quick review of the sent messages showed that the images had been sent to a private PR agency in London, not to the official press pool. The digital trail led back to a low-level staff member who had recently been transferred from the Privy Purse audit team to the Queen Consort's personal press office. The leak had been designed to force a public explanation from the Wales family, but the plan backfired. Instead of looking uncooperative, Charlotte's simple ribbon looked modest and respectful to the public, viewing the online coverage. The contrast between Camilla's heavy diamonds and the young girl's textile pin began to dominate the social media commentary. King Charles noticed the shift in the room's energy as the reception drew to a close. Several senior ambassadors had mentioned the green ribbon to him, assuming it was a planned tribute to the family's history. The king walked over to his granddaughter as the guests began to file out toward the ballroom for the supper buffet. He looked down at the silver coin pinned to the center of the silk. He smiled quietly and patted Charlotte on the shoulder. He remarked that his grandmother, Queen Mary, would have highly approved of the resourcefulness. He then turned his gaze toward Camilla, who was watching from the doorway of the West Gallery. The public event was over, but the quiet confrontation inside the private rooms of the palace was about to reach its final resolution. Whispers in the long gallery. The morning after the reception, a thick white envelope sat on the mahogany desk in the king's private study. It bore the blue wax seal of the law firm in Lincoln's Inn Fields. Prince William sat in the armchair opposite his father's desk. King Charles broke the seal with a silver letter opener, sliding out a single sheet of heavy parchment paper. The paper contained the definitive legal assessment from the estate lawyers. It confirmed that the 9-square-cut Mecklenburg-Strelitz emeralds had been officially designated as private property in a 22-page inheritance schedule from 1953. The British government had zero legal claim over them. This meant the Central Sovereign Collection could not absorb the piece. The audit launched by the Privy Purse was dead in the water. Charles laid the document flat on his desk. He stated that the legal definition was absolute. He instructed his private secretary to permanently remove asset 00047 from the active audit tracking list. The tension shifted back to the palace press office. By 9 o'clock, the digital fallout from the diplomatic reception had reached the front pages of the morning newspapers. One major London daily carried a headline asking why the young princess had been sidelined from wearing traditional family pieces. The public reaction was leaning heavily towards sympathy for the Wales family. The simple green ribbon looked dignified, while the bureaucracy of the palace looked cold and controlling. Camilla walked into the study just as the king was signing the formal dismissal of the audit. She did not look at the newspapers on the corner table. She sat down and stated that her office had already handled the internal matter regarding the junior press assistant who leaked the photos. The assistant had been reassigned to an administrative post at a regional estate outside of London. This quick removal was meant to close the loop on the security breach, but it left a larger mystery unresolved. The mystery was how the junior assistant had known exactly where to look for the asset files in the database. A low-level press staffer did not possess the high-level security clearance required to open the 1925 ledger files. William addressed the question directly. He showed his father an internal system log that his own security team had pulled that morning. The log proved that someone had used a senior digital token belonging to the master of the household's department to grant the assistant access. The digital token had been authorized from a computer terminal inside Clarence House 3 days prior to the fitting room confrontation. The evidence was clear. The leak was not an accident by a random employee. It was a coordinated attempt to build a public case against Charlotte's inheritance before the fitting even took place. Camilla did not offer an explanation for the digital token log. She simply picked up her leather handbag and stood up from her chair. She remarked that administrative oversights happen when multiple departments handle old files during a transition period. The tactical victory belonged to the young princess. Charlotte's decision to wear the ribbon had forced the legal truth into the open, while completely bypassing the trap her detractors had set. The legal team confirmed the private Balmoral clause remained ironclad. Camilla could not transfer the asset to her own grandchildren, and she could no longer use the privy purse to challenge the family boundaries. The gold and emerald bracelet remained locked inside the floor safe at Adelaide Cottage. It would stay there, untouched and secure, until Charlotte's 18th birthday, just as Queen Elizabeth had intended. A new line of power. The heavy steel door of the floor safe at Adelaide Cottage clicked shut for the final time that week. Princess Catherine turned the brass key and slipped it into her pocket. Princess Charlotte stood beside her, watching her mother secure the velvet box containing the emerald bracelet. The immediate battle over asset 00047 was over, but the structural power dynamics within the palace had permanently changed. The morning after the audit was officially dissolved, King Charles issued a new sovereign directive. The 2-page document was circulated directly to the Lord Chamberlain's office, the keeper of the privy purse, and the private secretaries of all senior royals. The directive clarified the rules for personal inheritances within the family. It stated that any asset containing a private codicil from the late Queen Elizabeth II was completely exempt from future institutional audits. Furthermore, the document barred the privy purse from investigating the provenance of any jewelry pieces without the explicit joint signatures of both the King and the Prince of Wales. This new rule effectively stripped Camilla's office of the bureaucratic tools she had used to challenge the Wales family assets. It closed the loophole that allowed researchers to search private databases under the guise of routine maintenance. The long-term implications of the confrontation extended far beyond the jewelry box. At just 11 years old, Princess Charlotte had proven that the younger generation of blood royals was fiercely protective of their heritage and boundaries. Her resourcefulness with the green silk ribbon had sent a clear signal to the senior members of the court. She had demonstrated that the authority of the future line of succession did not rely on the approval of the current consort's office. Later that afternoon, Prince William met with his father for a private walk through the home park at Windsor. The conversation was brief but decisive. William made it clear that the boundaries surrounding his children's personal lives and inheritances were absolute. The king acknowledged his son's stance. The transition of personal loyalty from the late Queen straight to the future of the House of Wales was now complete, leaving the current consort permanently sidelined on matters of family heritage. As the sun set over Windsor Castle, the gold and emerald bracelet remained safe in the dark vault, a silent symbol of a young princess who refused to back down. The battle for Queen Elizabeth's private legacy is just beginning behind the palace doors. What do you think about Princess Charlotte's clever response to the Queen Consort's move? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay updated on the latest secrets, betrayals, and power struggles inside the UK royal family, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in our next video.